Hello and welcome to our Retirement and Wealth Strategies webinar series. I'll be your host and moderator for the day. I am Nicholas Scarcella, Vice President of Retirement and Wealth Strategies. Today we'll be focusing on identity theft and elder abuse with our presentation from one of our trusted partners, Wayne State University, IOG, the Institute of Gerontology. We have about 45 minutes of prepared content, and we'll have Q&A throughout our presentation. Also at the end, we'll have a text message number you can send questions to throughout. Before I welcome Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, the director of the IOG, I am going to share a brief introduction on RWS and hand our presentation over to Peter. Brief intro to RWS, Retirement Wealth Strategies. We are a fiercely independent wealth management firm established in 1985, so over 35 years of experience. We do have 17 office locations with our home office in Farmington Hills, Michigan. As a company, there's about 32 financial advisors. We serve around 7,500 companies, 5,500 families across the country, many of those being companies. Next, I'd like to share our core values at RWS. These are commitments to our clients and what we believe guides our client experience, which are education, trust, relationship, compassion, and competency. Education, what we're doing here today, informing our clients and also the communities we serve. Trust, we earn your trust, never abuse it. Always have your best interests first. Relationships, we pride ourselves on the friendships we build with our clients, working with multi-generations, the children and grandchildren of our clients, or the parents and grandparents of our clients. Compassion, this is the patience and understanding of your evolving needs and circumstances. And finally, competency. It's our duty to be experienced, credentialed, and knowledgeable to best serve you. A little housekeeping here. If you're eating dinner, yelling at your dog, don't worry. It's a Zoom webinar. We can't hear you. We can't see you. It's automatically muted and the video is off. If you have questions, like I alluded to earlier, the next slide, I believe I have your the phone number you can text. It's also on the bottom of every slide throughout the webinar. If you have questions, text us and I'll turn my video back on for Peter and I'll ask your questions live. The webinar is being recorded along with all of our other webinars. They're all officially on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it again or share it with someone important to you, like a family member or a friend, please do. Your feedback's important. At the end, we do have a brief survey. I believe our next webinar is actually from your feedback you provided, and we're excited to share that topic next. The presentation will be about 45 minutes. Upcoming webinars next month, November, again, the last Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern is housing market. We're reviewing challenges and outlook in the housing market. We have two guest speakers. We have a real estate agent as well as a mortgage underwriter. So we'll see both sides of the coin, if you will, on that side. We take December off in observation for the holidays and the end of the year. Pick back up in January with another market update, January 25th, with another keynote speaker that's frequently on Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal. So we're excited to have her on as a guest speaker. And February will be another popular choice based on your feedback from the surveys. Here's the phone number, 833-797-4636. If you have questions throughout, this is the number you want to text for your questions. So with that, I'm going to now introduce our speaker, Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, but I want to first share a quick story and I'll hand it over. We have a RWS client, Kathy, that shared a nice comment while she was registering for our webinar. Kathy hired Dr. Peter Lichtenberg to assess her family member's mental capacity when the family member's son placed her family member in a memory care facility. Peter was amazing through that process. He met with her 3 separate sessions and deemed her to be competent to move out of that memory care facility. This is just a shining example of Peter's amazing work and the resource that the Wayne State IOG is to our community. So thanks, Kathy, for sharing that story. At this time, Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, it's our honor to welcome you We've been working with the IOG RWS for about 6 years now, starting with educating healthcare and hospitals throughout the state of Michigan. And we're excited and proud to call Peter our friend and an amazing resource for the RWS family. Peter, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Now, as I understand it, I need to share my screen now. Is that right?
Yes, please. We'll do the switcheroo right now.
Great. And there we go.
And Peter, I'll turn my camera throughout as questions come on. Otherwise, the floor is yours, as they say.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here, and thank you for the invitation again, Nicholas. I'm delighted because we're going to talk about fraud. We're also going to talk about financial exploitation. Anytime I get a chance to share things that maybe can help people prevent that in their own family, in their own life, I'm thrilled to do it. So fraud is a purposeful deception to gain access to the funds of an older or vulnerable adult. And we partnered with Murray Feldman to do a series of public service announcements. I'm going to use those. They're good kickoffs for the slides that follow. So here's Murray.
This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by Baldwin Senior Living and the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. Financial exploitation, it's a big problem. Older people are targeted the most and they lose the most money. Those 60 and older lost 50 to 70% more than those in their 30s and 40s. The FBI says 2022 losses from financial exploitation and fraud were 7 times higher than in 2017, adding up to a whopping $1.7 billion in losses. Why are older adults super victims? Loneliness, depression, dependence upon others, loss of mobility, cognitive decline, early dementia. And what scams are older adults most likely to fall for? The government imposter scam, lottery or sweepstakes, and romance scams. If you're worried that you or somebody you care about is vulnerable, visit olderadultnestegg.com and take the free financial vulnerability survey. This financial tip is brought to you by olderadultnestegg.com, a resource of Wayne State's Institute of Gerontology. This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial.
Great. Now I'm going to take it, since Nicholas didn't come back on, that everybody could hear that, and that I properly did share the sound. So I'm delighted about that, because Murray has such a great voice. I always then hate to follow him in the sense that, wow, what a great voice he has. But let's take a look at some of these losses, because you can see the numbers. Actually, fraudsters are targeting everybody. And you can see the 30 to 49 group had just as many victim complaints as did the over 60 group. But the loss of money by the over 60 group, as you can see, is about 70% higher than the 30 to 39-year-old group. So let's see what's been going on. This is an interesting slide, because although the reports during the pandemic were a little bit lower in 2021 in terms of numbers of people reporting, we saw dramatic increases in the losses. And I've been doing this kind of work for over 20 years in financial exploitation, following these figures. I cannot believe the unbelievable growth in the number of people being exploited and the amounts of dollars being lost. As Murray said, tech scams, tech support scams are one of the ones that are more common among older adults. And you can see here, those losses have just skyrocketed. And we're starting to see more and more confidence fraud or romance scams in older people as well. And that continues to increase both the numbers and in dollars lost. So let's take a closer look at financial exploitation. What is it? Ken Conrad from Illinois and Mickey Iris, his colleague, created these domains of financial exploitation. I think it's a good way to think about it. you actually lose the money by theft or scam. So somebody either steals it from you or deceives you. But the next three are the mechanisms, I think, by which this kind of abuse happens. Has someone convinced you to turn the title of your home over to them? Abuse of trust. Trusting relationships in which somebody abuses that trust is one of the most common mechanisms for how fraud and scams and theft work. Financial entitlement. Financial entitlement usually refers to adult children or other relatives feeling entitled to their parents' money. And it usually goes something like this. An older parent starts to need some assistance, maybe going to the doctor, getting a ride, getting shopping done. And for a subset of adults, then they start to feel that they are entitled to their parents' money as if it is already their inheritance and they're just using it early. You and I know this is theft, but unfortunately, entitlement has a lot of dramatic consequences. First of all, it really makes discussion about finances very sensitive across the generations, and oftentimes there is no communication about it. And we'll look at that a little bit later. Coercion or undue influence is a little bit more pernicious, a little bit more of a process that changes the power dynamic in the relationship. And usually a person's a lot more vulnerable, either emotionally or more often cognitively. And the last two domains are really risk factors. So what are the signs of possible financial exploitation? And managing your money and a decline in that is actually also a risk factor for exploitation. All right, Murray's going to tell us a little bit about the common scams, and we'll delve into those.
This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by Baldwin Senior Living and the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. The top ways older adults are scammed. Government imposter scam. The caller says you owe money to the IRS or Social Security. Pay right now or benefits will cease. You could be jailed or fined. Lottery or sweepstakes scams. You've won big. Just send a fee or gift cards to claim your prize. You pay out, nothing comes back. There's an older man who sent $800,000 overseas to claim $5 million in winnings. He's still waiting. Text scams. A message on your computer that a virus will destroy your files and photos. Give the sender computer access and a fee so they can fix it. But first, they may download your financial records and passwords and steal even more. All of these scams create pressure to act without thinking, so step away, breathe, talk to a friend, and don't buy that gift card, but visit olderadultnestegg.com, a free website with resources and assessments brought to you by Wayne State's Institute of Gerontology, sponsor of this week's Financial Tip. This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by...
One thing that we observed during the pandemic, I worked very closely with Michigan's Adult Protective Services, which is the social service agency for the state and each state across the country that is tasked with investigating elder abuse cases, including financial exploitation, including scams. Banks and credit unions are seeing an increase in romance scams, as are APS. And the other factor that we noted through some of the research we did with other universities across the country is that older adults during the pandemic reported higher rates of being contacted by would-be financial exploiters. Now, I want to see if you'll recognize some of the things that was in the public service announcement that Murray just said. And this is our mnemonic: pressure. This is the way that scammers work. First of all, phone is still one of the most common ways, although it's starting to become mail, email, text, but phone call is still the most common towards older adults. The second, though, the R, is requesting you send money by gift card or wire transfer. So we heard about the gentleman sending $800,000 and by wire transfer to get 5 million back. So those requests are going to come early and often, and they may, of course, increase in the amount that's requested. In the text scams, they want to extract personal information, the E, such as social security numbers, bank account numbers, under the guise of needing to verify your identity. One of the S's is secrecy. Scammers really want to insist that you keep contact with them a secret. So if this is a scammer that's developing an ongoing relationship with the victim, they really want to make that relationship confidential. Spamming, the other S, multiple emails or texts until one works on you. I've noticed now that I'm getting texts almost every day from somebody saying, hey, how are you? Or Walmart can't deliver a package to you, and they really want to. So please click on this link. That's the spamming. Urgency, the U, this is the big one. Scammers want you to act quickly before you start to become suspicious. So if anybody's pressuring you, it's a relative in need scam, it's a lottery scam, got to act now. It's a tech scam, everything's going to be destroyed if you don't act. That's that urgency that scammers want to instill in you. Repetitive requests to provide money or information, and emotional. Scammers appeal to emotions, make you panic, either scare you, your grandson is in jail, pay up now. So, Grandma, I hit somebody with a car. I'm in jail here in Peru. Please send $5,000 so I can at least get an attorney and maybe get a bail here. We're excited. You won the grand prize. They want you to act without thinking. Let's talk about Alzheimer's disease, though, because this is an underrated part of the whole picture of financial exploitation of older adults.
This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by Baldwin Senior Living and the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. What's Alzheimer's got to do with it? Older adults who become victims of financial exploitation or lose the ability to manage finances may be in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. They become obsessive about mail and phone calls and reply to every solicitation and sales pitch. One client sent a charity the same contribution 5 times in 2 weeks. He never remembered he had already donated. Another thought he'd given his grandson $1,000. In fact, his grandson had taken more than $100,000 in 10 months. Early in Alzheimer's disease, people can lose judgment and memory of financial deals and accounting. Caregiver support is critical. Learn how to have difficult conversations about money, how to manage somebody else's finances, and more at olderadultnestegg.com. The website provides free caregiver trainings and resources. olderadultnestegg.com. Click Family and Friends. This financial tip brought to you by the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University.
So Alzheimer's disease and dementia really exist on a continuum from cognitively unimpaired to severe dementia. But the points of mild cognitive impairment and mild dementia are the real danger ones for somebody who is susceptible to financial exploitation. By the time somebody gets to moderate dementia, somebody else has taken over their finances. But as we've heard just now from Murray, mild cognitive impairment, mild dementia might be the mail is the way that you detect Alzheimer's in your loved one, because they're answering all these mail solicitations that they didn't realize they already sent their contribution to their favorite charity, and now it's come back again. They send it again and again and again. And so that inability to recall and that sort of boundedness, if you will, that rigidity of thinking that they have to respond to it. So if you're worried about somebody's maybe having cognitive impairment, check out how they handle the mail and check out how that might look in their checkbook. Dementia's umbrella term, it's a constellation of symptoms, just a little Alzheimer's 101 here for you. And it can include cognitive, behavioral, and psychological symptoms. And it's due to biological changes in the brain. And in older people, Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Some causes of cognitive decline are reversible and are not truly dementia. So it really is important to recognize changes, get them evaluated, and watch them over time. What do we know about Alzheimer's now? It's been in the news quite a bit with some breakthrough medications and so forth. Here's what we still know. Gradual onset, it's insidious, invisible, and without, it's a progressive illness, so it worsens over time. I think it's about the 6th leading cause of death in older adults. Underlying brain changes begin well before the symptoms emerge, up to 10 to 20 years before the symptoms. What am I talking about? What they call plaques and tangles. The beta amyloid plaques, the abnormal protein, and the abnormal protein tau tangles inside the brain cells really cause the brain to shrink, atrophy. Brain damage accumulates over time. Memory and cognition become increasingly impaired, including judgment. And despite the breakthroughs in some of the medications that remove amyloid, current treatments cannot halt the process. At best, they can stave it off for a period of time, maybe a year or so early in the disease, but we don't have a cure. We're not close to one, and it continues to be an area of major research. If something else does not kill the person, Alzheimer's will progressively decline, and they're going to need a lot of care, increasing disability and dependence. A second major cause of being vulnerable to scams is what we call loneliness and psychological vulnerability. And we had some of the first research on this. It was with a national data set, the Health and Retirement Study, which is out of the University of Michigan, which is the largest study of older adults across the United States. It's a population-based study. And what we found was psychological vulnerability, which was a combination of higher levels of depression and lower levels of feeling that you had any status or that what you did was important. So what I like to say is high levels of depression and high levels of feeling invisible. In our initial sample, they had 3 times more likely to have been defrauded. In our follow-up sample, in our longitudinal study, where we took out anybody that was defrauded in the first wave, and we just followed people who had no fraud, we found that well over 2 times the amount, again, who had that high level of depression, high level of invisibility, were more likely. So some people are more likely than others to be susceptible. But as you can see, 1 in 25 of the sample in each case also who had no psychological vulnerability or cognitive problems also were the victims of fraud. Any of us can be defrauded. Let's talk about some romance scams.
This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by Baldwin Senior Living and the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. A 78-year-old man, widowed for 3 years, living alone in Michigan, met a woman online from California who he now calls his girlfriend. For months, he'd been sending her $300 Visa gift cards. He was about to send money for a plane ticket so she could move in with him. He spent $1,500 and never met her. It's a classic romance scam. They prey upon a lonely person's need for intimacy. The red flags were the gift card purchases. Gift cards are not traceable, and sending money for a ticket rather than the ticket. The man filled out the financial vulnerability survey at olderadultnestegg.com and discussed the results with his financial advisor. The scam was stopped. Safeguards were put in place. His $1,500 was not recovered, but he didn't lose any more. Are you vulnerable? Take the survey he did at olderadultnestegg.com. This financial tip is brought to you by olderadultnestegg.com at the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State. This is Murray Feldman with today's
So I want to tell you about how we developed the Financial Vulnerability Survey and what it is. We asked the question, how much does context matter in a financial decision relating to exploitation? And what we found was that 17 items fell out into a scale that's now the Financial Vulnerability Survey and has been filled out on our website, which you can do anonymously over 2,500 times. ARP discovered our tool and was the #1 listing. Find out how vulnerable you are. Take the survey. The first set of questions, about the first 8, maybe the first half, are what we call financial awareness questions. They include things like financial strain. How worried are you about having enough money to pay for things? But also satisfaction with finances and satisfaction with how you manage your money. Not only the question of who manages your money, but how satisfied are you with that? Self-efficacy around financial decisions. How confident are you? How often do you worry about financial decisions you've recently made? This is a very nice question to ask if you're wondering if somebody is the victim recently of a scam or exploitation. Then we get into psychological vulnerability questions. How often do you talk with or visit with others on a regular basis? How often do you wish you had someone to talk to about your financial decisions, transactions, or plans? No matter what sample we use, whether it's a national sample, a health and retirement study, or the local samples, somewhere between 40 and 50% of people that we've studied, which is thousands now, answer that at least sometimes they wish they had someone to talk to about their finances. My advice to them is talk to Nicholas. Don't talk to the scammers about it. Scammers know this, and they're looking for people who are dying to talk. How often do you feel anxious about your financial decisions or transactions? Do you have a confidant with whom you can discuss anything? Feeling downhearted and blue about your finances, or is your memory or thinking skills with regard to finances worse than a year ago? And the last 3 questions are, the last 3 questions are really about relationship strain. This question is very specific. As a relationship with a family member or friend becomes strained due to finances as you've gotten older, and yet a quarter to a third of all of our samples respond affirmatively to this. So we're seeing that kind of stress and relationship strain, and that really does make people vulnerable. And how likely is it that someone wants to take or use your money without your permission? How much are you feeling that somebody feels entitled to your money or is angling to get it? Here's our website. We encourage all of you to go on it. If you're a caregiver and you're worried about older people, go on the family and friends site. You can learn, all these are narrated, self-paced, and learn about early cognitive impairment, difficult conversations, detecting financial mismanagement, and managing someone else's money. If you're an older adult, you can answer the survey. It will give you, anonymously, you can answer it, and it'll give you feedback and ideas about the next step. If you're a professional, you can get on our site, see our tools, and get trained and certified in those. Let's talk about conversations. Why is money hard to discuss? It's really taboo. Well, most people consider their finances a private matter, even from their children. Most people also want to control their own finances. And parents often perceive more risk than benefit from discussing their finances with their children. There's a tension between being connected and being autonomous. Plander calls that the communication privacy management theory. You know, when I talk with older adults, I always ask them, how many of you talk to your children about your finances? And we usually have about 10 or 15% of the room raise their hand, great conversations, great discussions. Most of the rest of them say, you know, Peter, if my children knew I had money, they might want it. And that's kind of one of the worries when perceiving risks. But a couple of cases from this past year really kind of, I think, are great examples of what can go really wrong and what can go right. So this 55-year-old son was laid off during the pandemic, and he noted that his mother had become a bit of a hoarder. So she's in her 80s. She has a few properties, and the most valuable one is not inhabited. So he works for months during his unemployment to clean the place up, make it tip-top. Then he has a conversation with his mother if she ever considered selling the property, and she becomes irate. How dare he do anything to her property without her permission? And she becomes a bit paranoid. She declares he's only interested in her dying and his getting money. She refuses to acknowledge or speak to him again. A year later, the situation remained unchanged. These are the saddest stories. Now, with our SAFE program that these caregivers contacted us, we had a different outcome. Two daughters, they live in a different state than their mother. They see that she's getting caught up in a romance scam. They don't know what to do. Should they talk to her? If they do, what should they say? So they sought consultation from our SAFE program, and were taught how to have a conversation which they partner with their mother, not come on strong, not undermine her sense of security and identity. And during that conversation, she came to acknowledge her own awkward feelings about sending money to her new boyfriend, and she decided to stop doing it. So let's take a look at what went right and what went wrong. First of all, the mistakes in story one. Taking control, acting as if he had the authority to do so. The son needed to partner with his mother and give her control of decisions, just like Plander was saying, older adults still want to control their decisions. You cannot barge in. You cannot demand, you cannot come at an older parent as if you know better. You need to partner with them. His conversation about selling induced a lot of fear in her and a real threat to her identity as an independent person. Now, what went right in story number two? They approached the mother for a learning conversation. They really wanted to get to know more about how she met this guy and what they talked about and how this was going. It was non-judgmental. It allowed the mother a sense of control. But through conversation, gentle questions for clarification, she came to question the new romantic relationship. Those are the best outcomes that can happen, even when you think you're going to need to have more of a legal intervention. It's still best to partner with the older person. Desire for control and autonomy remains strong across the life course. So if you don't take anything else away, take that away. Vulnerability makes conversation about money even more difficult. The hoarding was a sign of a mental health problem in the mother, and that emotional mental health vulnerability makes conversation even more difficult. And you have to convey a deep respect for the older person. That helps to create the opportunity to partner with them.
This is Murray Feldman with today's Senior Financial Tip, brought to you by Baldwin Senior Living and the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. Did you or someone you know lose money through a fraud? Maybe your identity was stolen, credit cards charged, credit rating damage. It can ruin your finances and peace of mind. Call SAFE. SAFE, Successful Aging Through Financial Empowerment, offering free services to people 60 and up who've been victims of financial fraud. The SAFE program was created by Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, director of the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. SAFE helps you contact creditors, file police reports, and restore your credit, all at no cost. Directed by Ms. LaToya Hall, a social worker and financial services expert, SAFE will help you recover financially and emotionally. To see what SAFE provides, visit olderadultnestegg.com and click the SAFE tab. You'll find information, resources, and a link for help. It's confidential and free. This financial tip is brought to you by SAFE at olderadultnestegg.com from the
Thank you, Murray. And we're very proud of the SAFE program, which we created in 2017, modeled after a program by a group called Lifespan in Rochester, New York. But because we're also at a university, we've been able to do research and understand financial exploitation better. Part of creating the financial vulnerability survey was through some of the experiences of people who come into the SAFE program. Well, what is it? We are here to provide that one-on-one time and expertise that most places don't have time to do or the skills to do for a scam or identity theft victim. So if you've been the victim of identity theft or a scam and you know how to, check your credit report, put credit alerts on it, contact the FTC or the FBI or law enforcement, get the charges reversed, so forth and so on. You don't need us. But when somebody needs us, it really is having a financial impact on them. And this is what we do. We file police and consumer reports, contact credit report agencies, help you dispute information on your credit report. We can contact creditors and closing of accounts, tracing fraud alerts, and more. We also do a lot of education like this. So LaToya does free presentations on scam and identity theft, which she goes into all the latest ones and ways to keep yourself safe. We also, yes, go ahead, Nicholas.
Hi, Peter. I'm here for a water break and a question that came in. So we have the different categories of fraud and abuse, and maybe more so for friends, grandchildren, children, would be more of the abuse of trust domain. But when you look at, let's say, friends, children, grandchildren as one category, and then strangers and criminal organizations as the other, where does more abuse come from? Do you have any studies or insight on that?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. We do, actually. There are a lot of studies on that, Nicholas. A lot of studies that are population-based. Over and over again, they show that about 60% of the financial exploitation of older adults comes from people they know, and 40% from strangers.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a rough scenario because we know that older adults are being targeted, excuse me, by scammers over and over again. But that's not the only place where exploitation is taking place. And that abuse of trust, that sense of financial entitlement can be really powerful. Quick story. The New York Times during the pandemic, after the COVID vaccine came out and older people had gotten their vaccine, they ran a pretty snarky article about baby boomers or geezers who were partying, going out on cruises. And in the bottom of the article, they had some quotes from the adult children. And one of the quotes really stuck with me because it said, "What do they think they're doing? They're going out and spending my inheritance." And I thought, wow, the New York Times is actually endorsing financial entitlement. And this is because this is the greatest wealth transfer that our history's ever known, from older to other generations. entitlement is really growing. And when people think that, I never considered my parents' money as mine and wouldn't even think of it that way. But this is a different generation. This is a different point in time. A lot of people are struggling financially, and they see their parents' wealth as maybe the only way that they're going to survive. And or they want to enjoy the things in life that maybe some of their friends do and they can't afford, but they see their parents' wealth as a way to do that.
And that's concerning because with this big wealth transfer, if we don't get ahead of this, it'll only increase.
That's right. That's exactly right.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Sure. So with the SAFE program, we do help people recover financially, but also emotionally. We just published a study looking at if you're financially exploited by someone you trust, what are its impacts compared to being exploited by a stranger? And the results were very sad. First of all, in our sample, people who were exploited by someone they trusted lost more money. Second of all, they had higher levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. And third of all, their physical health was impacted. So we also do a lot of education, and we offer one-on-one support and education of caregivers on financial management issues. There's a lot of things that people don't realize about how to manage somebody else's finances, an older parent's finances. And too often a power of attorney will become joint on a bank account. That's actually not legal in Michigan. So there's a lot of rules that people need to learn. We do, the pandemic taught us that we could do this by phone, virtually, Zoom if somebody needs it, and be just as effective, and it's easier to schedule all around for everybody. So that's been really nice for us. As I said, some of the things that we do is dispute information, contact creditors, place fraud alerts. I want to share one story with you, actually two. Share this one and I'll share another one. A 63-year-old woman, she was turned down by her bank for an auto loan. But the bank staff looked and saw that she had quite a drop in her credit score, so they referred her to the SAFE. And we uncovered many fraudulent accounts, totaling about $5,000 in debt. So Latoya worked with the client to contact creditors, place fraud alert, complete police reports, fraud affidavits, and the creditor's fraud resolution process. And it was totally wiped out. It was resolved. The fraudulent debt was taken out. Now, many people probably this audience know how to take care of that themselves, but this woman did not. One of our more dramatic stories, an older man who desperately wanted to get married but couldn't because his finances were in such bad shape. Why? He owed $17,000 in student loans, this 75-year-old man. One issue was he'd never been to college. So clearly he didn't owe $17,000. He was a victim of identity theft. He had no idea what to do, how to dispute this. And Latoya was able to get it fully resolved. And he's happily married now. And that's one of the nice things that we can say. Latoya's been able to save or recover money in about half the cases. Especially when money's wired, there's almost no way for us to get it back. But in other cases, we really can help with that. So the SAFE phone number and 664-2608, or if you want to email Latoya, or you can find it online at olderadultnestle.com.
Peter, we did have two questions come in, if I could real quick
interject. Please. Excellent.
So first question, should phone calls to donate to the police be ignored or and taken as a scam, or can that be legitimate?
I think this day and age, taking phone calls from places that you really don't know is just a bad idea. If you want to give to the police, maybe you proactively reach out to the police organization that you want to give to and find out what the best way to do that is. I think you have to assume that some of these are scams. And so my advice is, if you don't recognize a phone number, I really encourage everybody to get caller ID and don't pick it up. They can leave a message for you. And if it's somebody soliciting for money and you really don't know them and you have, or that organization, stay away from it. If you do know them, don't call back on the number they sent. Look up the number that for that organization, see if it matches. Be careful that way. So so be careful about answering the phone. What the scammers know,
Yep.
is
And
that
then
any conversation you have increases your risk, actually, of getting defrauded. Sorry.
oh no, my apologies. Excellent, thank you. And I agree with that. If you want to make a donation, go directly and get the proper instructions. So second question, how important is a home title lock to protect your home from scammers? Any insights on home title lock?
That I don't know. And Nicholas, your guest in the next month, I think it was the real estate, the mortgage underwriter might have a better answer than I do.
Great point, Peter. Tune in next month to our monthly webinar to learn more.
Yeah, sorry
Thanks,
to say, I don't know that one. The final area I want to cover, though, is our wallet study. This is examining early memory loss and personal finance. So how are we doing that? This is kind of a unique study, and you're going to wonder, how feasible was this, Peter? Because I wanted to really assess the daily financial management aspects of personal finance in older persons with early memory loss who were still primary on their checking accounts. And so what we did was review 12 months of their checking account statements prior to interviewing them. During the interview and during the review, we did all these things. We established that they were the primary person on the checking account. And we determined all sources of income that we could see, and we would ask for others because they might have two accounts and so forth. We documented the monthly inflows and outflows. We looked for late payments, withdrawals. We ascertained any unusual large expenses. And we stress test categories of expenses and classified some of those financial behaviors. What do we find? We actually are up to 150. I just interviewed my 150th last week. So we are done with our data collection. Those with early memory complaints, over half of them were spending 10% beyond their income. That was significantly different than those with no memory complaints, which was the 24%. So remember I said money management difficulties was a risk for financial exploitation. It's also a risk for excess spending. One of the biggest factors, we're still going to be cleaning and looking at our data, but one thing that's just jumped out to us preliminarily, people who were with early memory loss who were helping someone else financially on a regular basis, they often were just underestimating how much they were helping. And so it was way beyond what they really could afford. Financial decision-making with our rating scale and financial vulnerability with the survey were key factors in excess expenditures too. So 32% of those with early memory complaint were scoring in the moderate to high risk for financial exploitation. So, summary and a call to action. First of all, with scams, learn about the scammer's technique. Remember the pressure mnemonic. Assess your own vulnerability. What is your risk of being scammed or exploited? Go on our website, take the financial vulnerability survey. And beware, if you are experiencing early memory loss, it often relates to excess spending. And that could be get you into some financial difficulties. I'm going to stop the share, Nicholas.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
Questions or comments?
Absolutely fascinating. No other questions. If you do have any at this time, please share them. Let me share the final slide here. Share screen. Bear with me for 1 second. Let's get the last slide. So while I'm pulling this up, Peter, to give some recognition to your other studies at Wayne State, see if I can do from the finals. Here we go. And possibly generate ideas for our viewers while completing the survey, which will pop up when we end this webinar. There's other studies for the Institute of Gerontology, the aging brain study and the caregiving study for older folks. Can you touch on those, please?
Yes, the Detroit Aging Brain Study, which is a 25-year-old study that's been continuously funded by the National Institute on Aging, is absolutely known internationally because it's one of the best studies on cognitive aging, normal aging, and brain aging, and also what are early indicators for cognitive problems. Our caregiving study is one of our newer faculty members, Amanda Leggett, and she's doing 2 different studies, actually. She's got a survey that she created and is finalizing kind of a questionnaire that gets at caregiving types, and strategies for caregiving types differ. So the way people approach caregiving and just their personality and their interaction style. And she also is looking beyond the single caregiver in her other study and looking at caregiving networks. So it's really going to be fascinating to learn about that as well. So we're so thrilled. Amanda came to us in August of 2022, and she is just a rock star.
And one thing that we discuss with our clients when we're completing financial plans is the potential risk and the need of long-term care throughout their lifetime. And one big component, it may not be assisted living, but it could be some level of memory care, some level of help at your home or in a full-time assisted living facility, which can be incredibly expensive. So do you have any just general comments or insights on that? Or
Yep. Our retired faculty member now, but Gail Jensen Summers, our health economist faculty member, studied long-term care insurance for a long time. And when people kept it up, it really produced great benefits for them. But often people would not keep it up. And it really was a shame. And so we saw quite a bit of drop off. So if you're going to do it, you've got to make a commitment to staying with it, because otherwise you're going to lose a lot of money that you could have saved otherwise. But people who do have long-term care insurance really benefit from it. We know that 1 out of every family is going to need some kind of long-term care. And so we have to prepare for it.
And just as a general comment, if anyone's attending or interested in learning more, speak to your RWS advisor directly, please. All of us are well familiar with insurance planning for long-term care. So Peter, we sincerely appreciate our partnership, your expertise, and all the knowledge you brought to us today. So thank you to you and your studies and the whole IOG team at Wayne State.
Thank you for having me, Nicholas. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.